September 22nd, 2024. 15-year-old Zara had been invisible on these streets for 2 years, until the moment she chose to help a stranger bleeding out on the pavement instead of walking away like everyone else did. Within minutes, she went from hero to handcuffed, accused of theft, assault, and causing the accident that nearly killed him. But when the millionaire biker finally regained consciousness and learned what happened to the girl who saved his life, would his wealth and influence be enough to fight a system built to punish people like her? Or would Zara pay the price for her kindness? The intersection of Ashland Avenue and Roosevelt Road in Chicago had never been quiet, but at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late September, it became chaotic. Zara Mitchell sat against the brick wall of a closed laundromat, her backpack tucked between her knees, a tattered paperback novel open in her lap. She'd been reading the same page for 10 minutes, not because the words were difficult, but because her stomach growled so loudly it drowned out her concentration. She was 15 years old, though she looked younger, small-framed, with dark skin that hadn't seen proper sunlight in weeks, and hair pulled back into a fraying braid beneath a donated Cubs cap. She'd been homeless for 2 years. Not by choice but by circumstance, a mother who chose drugs over her daughter, a foster system that lost track of her after she ran from her third placement, and a city that had learned not to see girls like her at all. The roar of the motorcycle engine cut through the afternoon traffic like a chainsaw through silk. Zara looked up just in time to see the sleek black Ducati weaving through cars, the rider's leather jacket catching the sunlight. He was moving fast. Too fast for this intersection where delivery trucks double-parked and pedestrians jaywalked with the confidence of people who'd survived worse. Then it happened. A silver SUV pulled out from a parking spot without signaling. The biker swerved hard to the right, his tires screaming against the asphalt. For a split second, it looked like he might make it. Then the bike hit a pothole the city had been promising to fix for 6 months, and the rider lost control. The crash wasn't loud, not like in movies. It was a sickening crunch of metal and flesh against pavement, the skid of the motorcycle spinning across the street, and then a terrible, heavy silence. Zara dropped her book. Her body moved before her mind caught up, feet pounding across the sidewalk toward the crumpled figure in the middle of the street. The biker lay motionless, his helmet cracked down the center, one arm twisted at an angle that made her stomach lurch. Around her, people stopped. The car doors opened. Pedestrians pulled out their phones, not to call for help, but to record. A woman in yoga pants stood on the corner, filming. A man in a business suit watched from his Lexus, engine still running. No one moved to help. Zara dropped to her knees beside the biker, her hands shaking. "Hey!" she said, voice cracking. "Can you hear me?" No response. His chest rose and fell, shallow, labored breaths that whistled through the cracked helmet visor. Blood pooled beneath his head, seeping through the cracks in the helmet and spreading across the asphalt like spilled paint. She'd taken a first aid class once, back when she still lived in a house with a mother who cared. The lessons flooded back. Check for breathing, stop the bleeding, don't move them unless there's immediate danger. Zara yanked off her zip-up hoodie, the cleanest piece of clothing she owned, stolen from a donation bin 2 weeks ago, and pressed it against the visible wound on his arm where the pavement had torn through his jacket. The fabric turned red immediately. "Somebody call 911, she shouted over her shoulder. "I already did," a voice called back, but no one came closer. The biker groaned, his eyes fluttering behind the visor. Zara leaned down, trying to see his face through the cracked plastic. "Stay with me, okay? Help's coming." His hand moved slightly, fingers twitching. She grabbed it instinctively, squeezing. "You're going to be okay." That's when she noticed his watch, a Rolex Submariner, the kind she'd only seen in magazine ads. His leather jacket wasn't just any jacket. It was custom, with embroidered patches and reinforced padding. The motorcycle, now mangled and leaking fluids 10 feet away, had probably cost more than most people made in a year. This wasn't just some guy. This was someone. But right now, he was just a person bleeding out on the street, and Zara was the only one trying to save him. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Zara kept pressure on the wound, her hands slick with blood. The biker's breathing steadied slightly, and for a moment she thought maybe, just maybe, he'd be okay. Then she heard the voice behind her, sharp and accusatory. "She's robbing him." Zara's head snapped up. A woman stood on the sidewalk, mid-30s, wearing designer sunglasses and holding a shopping bag from Nordstrom. She pointed at Zara with a manicured finger. "I saw her. She was going through his pockets." "What?" Zara's voice came out strangled. "No, I'm trying to help. She caused the accident." Another voice, this time a man in a Cubs jersey. "I saw her run into the street right before he crashed." "That's not true," Zara shouted, but more voices joined the chorus. "Look at her hands. She's covered in blood." Someone stops her before she takes his wallet. "Where's security? Why isn't anyone doing anything?" Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked down at her hands. They were indeed covered in blood, his blood, from trying to save his life. Her hoodie lay soaked and discarded beside her. To anyone not paying attention, it might look like evidence of violence rather than mercy. "I didn't do anything." Her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. "I'm trying to help him." An ambulance screeched to a stop at the intersection, followed immediately by a police cruiser. Two paramedics jumped out, medical bags in hand, but before they could reach the victim, two police officers moved faster. "Step away from him." The first officer, a white man in his 40s with a crew cut and a voice used to being obeyed, had his hand on his belt. "Now!" Zara raised her blood-stained hands slowly, her whole body trembling. "I was helping him, he's hurt." "I said step back." The officer grabbed her arm roughly, yanking her away from the injured biker. She stumbled, nearly falling, her backpack spilling open across the pavement. A water bottle, a toothbrush, a change of clothes, and the battered paperback she'd been reading. The second officer, a younger black woman with sharp eyes, moved to secure the scene while the paramedics finally reached the victim. They worked quickly, checking vitals, stabilizing his neck, preparing to move him. "She was going through his pockets?" The woman with the Nordstrom bag said again, louder now, stepping forward like a witness taking the stand. "I saw it with my own eyes. She probably caused the accident to rob him." "That's a lie," Zara shouted, her voice breaking. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not now. I was trying to stop the bleeding." The first officer tightened his grip on her arm. "You have the right to remain silent. I didn't do anything wrong. Anything you say can and will be used against you." "I saved his life." Her voice rose to a scream, raw and desperate. "Why won't anyone listen to me?" The crowd had grown now, phones held high, recording every moment. Some faces showed concern. Others showed satisfaction, the ugly thrill of watching someone else's downfall. And many showed nothing at all, the blank indifference of people who'd already decided what they were seeing. A homeless girl. A bleeding rich man. The story wrote itself. The officer spun her around, forcing her hands behind her back. The metal handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists, cold and final. "You're under arrest for assault, attempted robbery, and reckless endangerment." "No!" Zara struggled, but the officer's grip was iron. "Please. I was just trying to help." One of the paramedics looked up from where they were loading the biker onto a stretcher. "Officer, we need to transport him immediately. He's lost a lot of blood." "Is he going to make it?" the younger officer asked. "Unknown. We need to move now." As they lifted the stretcher, the biker's hand slipped from beneath the blanket, hanging limp. The Rolex caught the light, and several people in the crowd gasped. Someone muttered, "That watch is worth 50 grand. The officer holding Zara followed their gaze, then looked down at her threadbare clothes, her dirty sneakers, the backpack full of nothing. His expression hardened. "Victim's wallet," the younger officer said, holding up a leather billfold she'd found near the motorcycle. She flipped it open, eyes widening slightly. "License says his name is—" "Oh, what?" her partner asked. She held up a business card tucked behind the license. "Thomas Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Industries." A ripple went through the crowd. Someone whispered, "The tech guy?" The millionaire. Zara's legs nearly gave out. A millionaire. She'd been trying to save a millionaire, and now she was being arrested for it. The younger officer looked at Zara with something like pity, but it vanished quickly behind professional neutrality. Let's get her to the station. As they led her toward the patrol car, Zara caught one last glimpse of the ambulance pulling away, sirens blaring. Inside was the man whose life she tried to save, unconscious and unaware that the person who'd kept him alive was now in handcuffs. The crowd parted as they walked her through, some still filming, others whispering. The woman with the Nordstrom bag stood with her arms crossed, nodding with satisfaction. The man in the Cubs jersey shook his head like he'd known all along this would end badly. Zara kept her head up, spine straight despite the handcuffs biting into her wrists. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Not yet. The police car door opened, and the officer placed his hand on her head, guiding her into the back seat. The door slammed shut with the finality of a verdict already delivered. Through the window, Zara could see the crowd dispersing, people returning to their cars and their lives. The accident scene was already being cleaned up, glass swept aside, traffic redirected. In an hour, there'd be no sign anything had happened at all, except for the blood still drying on Zara's hands and the weight of injustice pressing down on her chest like a stone. The patrol car pulled away from the curb, and Zara closed her eyes. She'd been invisible on these streets for 2 years, walking past thousands of people who never saw her, and the one moment she chose to be seen, to act, to help, it had turned her into a criminal. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much that as the city blurred past the window, Zara wondered if Thomas Caldwell, the millionaire biker lying unconscious in an ambulance, would ever know that a homeless teenager had saved his life, or if, like everyone else, he'd only remember her as the girl who supposedly tried to destroy it. The holding cell at the 12th District Police Station smelled like bleach, sweat, and desperation. Zara sat on the metal bench, her back against the cold cinder block wall, staring at her hands. The blood had dried to a dark rust color, cracking in the creases of her palms like a map of everywhere she'd been wrong. They'd taken her backpack, her book, the Cubs cap that had been her only shield against the sun. They'd photographed her from every angle, pressed her fingers into ink, and asked questions she couldn't answer because her brain had stopped processing language somewhere between the handcuffs and the cell door slamming shut. Now she sat alone, listening to the fluorescent lights buzz overhead like trapped insects, and tried to understand how saving someone's life had become a crime. The door at the end of the corridor opened with a metallic clang. Footsteps approached, measured, professional. Zara didn't look up. Zara Mitchell. A woman's voice, softer than she expected. She raised her eyes slowly. Standing outside the cell was the younger officer from the scene, the black woman with the sharp eyes. Up close, Zara could see her name tag. Officer J. Harper. "How do you know my name?" Zara asked, her voice hoarse from screaming, from crying in the police car when she thought no one was listening. Harper unlocked the cell door but didn't open it. "We ran your prints. You're in the system from a truancy case 2 years ago." She paused. "You were reported missing from foster care 17 months ago." Zara said nothing. What was there to say? That she'd run because the foster father's hands wandered at night? That no one had looked for her very hard because girls like her were easy to forget? Harper stepped into the cell, letting the door swing shut behind her. She pulled out a small notepad. "I need you to tell me what happened. Your version." "My version." Bitterness crept into Zara's voice. "As opposed to what? The version where I'm a criminal?" "As opposed to the version those witnesses gave," Harper said carefully. "Which, for the record, doesn't make sense to me." Zara looked up sharply. "What?" Harper sat down on the bench, maintaining a professional distance but removing the barrier of authority between them. "I've been doing this job for 6 years. I know what a robbery looks like, and I know what panic looks like. You were panicking, not running, not searching his pockets for valuables. You were trying to stop the bleeding with your own clothes." Something cracked inside Zara's chest, a hairline fracture in the wall she'd built to survive the streets. "Then why am I here?" "Because witnesses said you caused the accident and tried to rob him." Because he's Thomas Caldwell, and when rich people get hurt, someone has to pay. Harper's jaw tightened. And because you're a black girl with no fixed address, which means you're guilty until proven innocent. That's not justice. That's just how it works. Tears burned in Zara's eyes, but she blinked them back. Is he okay? The biker. He's in surgery at Northwestern Memorial. Critical but stable. Harper flipped open her notepad. Now tell me everything. Start from the beginning. So Zara did. She described sitting against the laundromat wall, reading her book. The motorcycle was speeding through traffic. The SUV pulled out without warning. The crash. Running to help because no one else would. The blood, the pressure, the desperate attempt to keep him alive until help arrived. Did you touch his wallet? Harper asked. No, I never went near his pockets. I was focused on the bleeding. Did you see who was driving the SUV? Zara frowned, trying to remember. It was silver. I think I saw it drive away after the crash. It didn't stop. Harper's pen still. Hit and run. I didn't even think about it at the time. I just wanted to help him. Harper closed her notepad, studying Zara with an expression that was hard to read. There were at least 20 people at that intersection. Any one of them could have helped. Why did you? Zara's voice came out small. Because nobody helps me. Ever. And I didn't want him to know what that feels like. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of 2 years sleeping in doorways, eating from dumpsters, and being looked through like she was made of glass. Harper stood slowly. I'm going to review the traffic camera footage from that intersection. If what you're saying is true, and I believe it is, then those witnesses either lied or jumped to conclusions. She paused at the cell door. But I need you to understand something. Thomas Caldwell is a very powerful man. If he wakes up and says you attacked him, my belief won't matter. Evidence will. What happens to me now? You'll be processed and held until arraignment. Given your age and the charges, you'll probably be transferred to juvenile detention tomorrow morning. Harper's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. I know that's not what you want to hear. After she left, Zara pulled her knees to her chest and pressed her forehead against them. Juvenile detention. She'd avoided it for 17 months by staying invisible, by never getting caught, by being a ghost the city chose not to see. Now she'd be locked up for the crime of compassion. Across the city at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Thomas Caldwell lay unconscious in the ICU, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped rhythmically. His head was bandaged, his left arm in a cast, his ribs wrapped tightly where they'd cracked on impact. He didn't know that a 15-year-old homeless girl had saved his life, that he didn't know she was in a jail cell being punished for it. And he didn't know that the security footage from 3 different angles was already being pulled by Officer Harper, who'd spent too many years watching the system fail the people it was supposed to protect. In the waiting room, Thomas's younger sister Jennifer paced, her phone pressed to her ear. I don't care what time it is in Tokyo, cancel his meetings. All of them. My brother is in surgery. She ended the call and collapsed into a chair, running her hands through her dark hair. A nurse approached carefully. Miss Caldwell, your brother is out of surgery. The doctors say he was lucky. If someone hadn't applied pressure to that arterial wound immediately, the nurse trailed off, the implication clear. Jennifer looked up, exhausted and grateful. Who helped him? I want to thank them. The nurse's expression shifted to something uncomfortable. I'm not sure. The police report mentions a witness, but she hesitated. You should speak with the officers. What aren't you telling me? Before the nurse could answer, 2 detectives appeared in the waiting room doorway. The lead detective, a gray-haired man with a tired face, approached Jennifer. Ms. Caldwell? I'm Detective Raymond Foster. We need to ask you some questions about your brother's accident. Jennifer stood. What kind of questions? Did your brother have any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt him? Her eyes widened. What? No, this was an accident, a hit and run. That's what the officer at the scene said. Detective Foster exchanged a glance with his partner. We're investigating all possibilities, including the theory that someone intentionally caused the accident and attempted to rob your brother while he was unconscious. That's insane. Who would? Jennifer stopped processing. You arrested someone? A juvenile. 15-year-old black female. No fixed address. Multiple witnesses reported seeing her go through his pockets at the scene. Jennifer's legal training kicked in immediately. She was a civil rights attorney and had spent the last decade fighting exactly these kinds of cases. What evidence do you have beyond witness statements? The detective shifted uncomfortably. The investigation is ongoing. That's not an answer. Jennifer's voice hardened. You arrested a child based on what? Assumptions? Did you pull traffic camera footage? Interview every witness? Check for the vehicle that actually caused the accident? Ma'am, we're doing our job. Are you? She stepped closer, her grief transforming into righteous fury. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you found the easiest target and called it solved. A homeless black girl at the scene of a rich white man's accident? That's not evidence. That's profiling. Detective Foster's jaw tightened. With all due respect, your brother is the victim here. My brother is alive because someone helped him, Jennifer shot back. And if that someone is sitting in a cell right now to save his life, then we're all victims. Of laziness, of prejudice, and of a system that's supposed to seek truth but settles for convenience. The detective opened his mouth to respond, but Jennifer was already pulling out her phone, dialing. Yes, this is Jennifer Caldwell. I need you to pull every piece of footage from the intersection of Ashland and Roosevelt from 4:30 to 5 p.m. today. Traffic cameras, business security cameras, everything. She paused. Because my brother's life may have been saved by someone who's being punished for it, and I'm not letting that stand. She ended the call and turned back to the detectives. When my brother wakes up, and he will wake up, he's going to want to know who helped him. And when he finds out what you did to her, there will be consequences. I suggest you start looking for the actual truth before that happens. Detective Foster nodded slowly, recognizing a force he couldn't intimidate. We'll review all evidence thoroughly. See that you do. After the detectives left, Jennifer sank back into the waiting room chair, her hands trembling. She didn't know the girl's name yet, didn't know her story, her face, or what had brought her to that intersection at exactly the right moment. But she knew injustice when she saw it. And she knew her brother would never forgive himself if someone suffered for saving him. And the ICU. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking Thomas Caldwell's slow climb back to consciousness. His eyes moved beneath closed lids, trapped in dreams he wouldn't remember. And in a cell downtown, Zara Mitchell stared at the ceiling, counting the water stains and wondering if anyone would ever believe that all she'd wanted to do was help. Tomorrow would bring arraignment hearings and juvenile detention transfers. But tonight, in different rooms across Chicago, two people who'd never met were connected by blood and injustice, and a truth that hadn't fully emerged yet. The story was just beginning. The Cook County Juvenile Detention Center smelled like industrial cleaner and hopelessness. Zara sat on the edge of a thin mattress in a 6x8 cell, her orange jumpsuit too big at the shoulders, too short at the ankles. Through the small window reinforced with wire mesh, she could see a sliver of gray Chicago sky. She'd been processed that morning. Fingerprinted again, photographed again, stripped of the few possessions she'd had left. A social worker had asked her questions in a monotone voice, checking boxes on a form without making eye contact. Did she have a family? No. Emergency contact? No. Anyone who could vouch for her character? No. She was a ghost again, except now she was a ghost in a cage. The door buzzed and slid open. A guard gestured. You've got a visitor. The attorney consulted. Zara frowned. I don't have an attorney. You do now. Let's go. The consultation room was painted the same institutional beige as everything else, furnished with a metal table bolted to the floor and two plastic chairs. Sitting in one of them was a woman in her late 30s, wearing a tailored blazer and determined expression. Her dark hair was pulled back, and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. Zara Mitchell? The woman stood, extending her hand. I'm Jennifer Caldwell. I'm an attorney, and I'd like to represent you. Zara didn't take the offered hand. Caldwell, like Thomas Caldwell? He's my brother. Jennifer lowered her hand but didn't sit back down. And before you say anything else, I know what you're thinking. Why would his sister want to help you? Because I've spent my career fighting wrongful prosecutions, and this is the most wrongful I've seen in years. Zara remained standing, arms crossed defensively. Your brother's a millionaire who got hurt. I'm a homeless kid who was at the scene. The story writes itself. The story they're telling writes itself, Jennifer corrected. The true story is more complicated. She pulled out a tablet, tapping the screen. I've spent the last 18 hours reviewing evidence. Security footage from 3 businesses, traffic camera footage, and cell phone videos from witnesses. She turned the tablet toward Zara. Want to see what actually happened? The video played silently, grainy footage from a corner store security camera. Zara watched herself sitting against the laundromat wall, reading. The motorcycle appeared in frame, weaving through traffic. Then the silver SUV pulled out without warning. The crash. Zara's immediate sprint toward the fallen rider. Jennifer swiped to the next video, a traffic camera with a different angle. This one showed Zara removing her hoodie, pressing it against the wound, her body language clearly desperate rather than predatory. You could see her shouting at the crowd. See the moment the accusations started. There's more, Jennifer said, swiping again. This footage showed the silver SUV more clearly, and its license plate. The vehicle that caused the accident didn't stop. It's registered to a shell corporation, which took some digging, but I tracked it down. She paused. The driver works for a competitor of my brother's company. We're investigating whether this was intentional corporate sabotage. Zara's legs felt weak. She sank into the chair. So this wasn't even about me. No. But you became the convenient scapegoat. Jennifer pulled out a legal pad filled with notes. The witnesses who accused you, I've identified 3 primary ones. The woman with the shopping bags? She's been arrested twice for filing false insurance claims. The man in the Cubs jersey? He has a history of anti-homeless advocacy, including pushing for ordinances to criminalize sleeping in public. The 3rd witness recanted when pressed. Admitted he didn't actually see you go through pockets, just assumed based on your appearance. Why are you telling me this? Zara's voice came out smaller than she intended. Why do you care? Jennifer's expression softened. Because my brother is alive because of you. The paramedics said if someone hadn't applied pressure to that artery immediately, he would have bled out before the ambulance arrived. You saved his life. She leaned forward. And because I'm a civil rights attorney who's represented dozens of kids exactly like you, punished for the crime of being poor, being black, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm not letting it happen again. What does your brother think about all this? He's still unconscious. The doctors induced a coma to reduce brain swelling. Jennifer's voice caught slightly. But I know Thomas. The moment he wakes up and learns what happened, he'll move heaven and earth to fix this. Until then, I'm doing it for him. The door opened and Officer Harper stepped inside, carrying a file folder. She nodded at Jennifer. Counselor. Officer Harper has been very helpful, Jennifer said. She's the one who pulled the security footage initially. Harper sat down, opening the folder. I've also been interviewing witnesses who weren't at the original scene. A delivery driver 2 blocks away saw the SUV run a red light moments before the crash. A cyclist got a partial video of the SUV fleeing. We're building a timeline that proves this was a hit and run, possibly attempted murder, and you were just a bystander who tried to help. The prosecutor isn't dropping charges yet, Jennifer added. They're embarrassed. They made a big public statement about arresting you, about protecting the city from opportunistic criminals. Admitting they were wrong makes them look incompetent. So I'll stay here, Zara said flatly. For now, Jennifer agreed. But we're filing motions to dismiss. We're requesting an emergency hearing. And we're going public with the evidence. She pulled out her phone, showing Zara a news article draft. I have contacts at 3 major news outlets ready to run this story. Homeless teen saves CEO's life, gets arrested for it. Once this hits, the pressure on the prosecutor's office will be enormous. Zara read the headline, her chest tightening. She'd spent 2 years trying to be invisible. Now her face, her story, her trauma would be everywhere. I don't want to be famous. I know, Jennifer said gently. But sometimes the only way to fight injustice is to drag it into the light where everyone can see it. Harper added, there's something else you should know. We found your social worker from 2 years ago, the one assigned when you went missing from foster care. She's willing to testify that she never properly investigated your disappearance, that the system failed you long before this arrest. Why would she admit that? Because she has a conscience, Harper said. And because Jennifer scared the hell out of her with the possibility of a civil rights lawsuit if she didn't cooperate. Jennifer didn't deny it. We're building a case not just about this false arrest, but about the systemic failures that put you on those streets in the first place. Foster care that didn't protect you. A truancy system that criminalized you instead of helping you. A city that made you invisible until it was convenient to make you a villain. Zara's hands trembled in her lap. For 2 years, she'd survived by being small, quiet, unnoticed. Now these women were asking her to be loud, to be visible, to let the world see every wound. What if I don't want to fight? She whispered. What if I just want this to be over? Jennifer reached across the table, stopping just short of touching Zara's hand. Then you plead guilty to save yourself the trauma of a trial. You take whatever sentence they offer. You spend the next few years in juvenile detention, then age out with a record that will follow you forever. Her voice was steady but kind. Or you fight. You let us tell the truth. You let the world see that you're not a criminal, you're a survivor. And maybe, just maybe, we make sure this doesn't happen to the next kid. Harper nodded. I've seen a lot of kids go through this system. Most of them don't have someone like Jennifer Caldwell in their corner. Most of them don't have video evidence. Most of them lose. She looked at Zara directly. You have a chance to win, but only if you're brave enough to try. Zara closed her eyes, thinking about the girl she'd been 2 years ago. The one who'd run from a foster home rather than report what was happening. The one who'd chosen invisibility over confrontation. That girl wouldn't fight. But that girl had never saved a stranger's life only to be punished for it. Okay, Zara said, opening her eyes. I'll fight. Jennifer smiled, the first real warmth Zara had seen from her. Good, because we've got work to do. She pulled out a stack of papers. First, we need to document everything. Your story, start to finish. Every detail of that day, of the last 2 years, of what brought you to that intersection. It's going to hurt, Harper warned. Telling your story, having people pick it apart. Not everyone will believe you, even with evidence. I know, Zara said, and she did. She'd lived on streets where people looked through her like she didn't exist. She'd heard the whispers, the assumptions, the casual cruelty of a city that had decided people like her didn't matter. But maybe, just maybe, if she fought hard enough, she could matter. Not as a statistic or a headline, but as a person who'd done the right thing and refused to be punished for it. Jennifer opened her legal pad to a fresh page. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me about the day you left foster care. And for the first time in 2 years, Zara began to speak. Not just to survive, but to be heard. Outside the detention center, the Chicago afternoon faded into dusk. Somewhere across the city, Thomas Caldwell lay in a hospital bed, his mind trapped in medically induced darkness. He didn't know yet that his sister was fighting for a girl he'd never met. He didn't know that evidence was mounting in Zara's favor. But he would soon, and when he woke up, everything would change. The story broke at 6 a.m. on Thursday morning, 3 days after the accident. Homeless teen arrested for saving CEO's life, screamed the headline on the Chicago Tribune's website. By 7 a.m., it had been picked up by the Associated Press. By 8 a.m., it was trending nationally on social media under #JusticeForZara. In her cell, Zara knew none of this. She'd spent another sleepless night on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling and wondering if fighting back had been a mistake. Jennifer had warned her the media attention would be intense. But Zara hadn't understood what that meant until a guard woke her at 6:30 a.m. with unusual urgency. You've got press camped outside the facility, the guard said. not unkindly. The director wants you moved to a more secure wing. Why? The guard hesitated. Because you're famous now, kid. And not everyone's happy about it. By noon, the story had exploded. News vans surrounded the juvenile detention center. Protesters gathered with signs, "Free Zara Mitchell," and "Homelessness is not a crime." Counter-protesters held their own signs, "Law and order," and "Criminals aren't heroes." Inside the Cook County State's Attorney's office, Prosecutor Michael Brennan sat in an emergency meeting with his staff, his face flushed with anger. The Tribune article sat on the table between them, accompanied by printouts of social media posts, emails from city council members, and a particularly scathing editorial from a prominent civil rights organization. How did this happen? Brennan demanded. How did we go from a simple arrest to a national incident? His deputy, a sharp woman named Rachel Torres, didn't mince words. Because we arrested a homeless teenager for saving someone's life based on witness statements we didn't properly vet. And now there's video evidence proving she's innocent. We had probable cause. We had assumptions, Torres interrupted. 3 witnesses with questionable credibility, and we ran with it because it was easy. Now Jennifer Caldwell has turned this into a referendum on how we treat the homeless and minorities. Brennan scrolled through his phone, his jaw tightening with each new headline. Caldwell's a crusader. She's using this case to make us look like villains. We made ourselves look like villains, Torres said quietly. The question is, what do we do now? Across town in his campaign headquarters, Mayor Vincent Harrison watched the news coverage with growing alarm. He was up for re-election in 6 months, and his tough-on-crime platform was suddenly looking like cruel to vulnerable children. His campaign manager paced. You need to make a statement. Distance yourself from the prosecutor's office. I can't throw Brennan under the bus. He's endorsed me publicly. Then you go down with him when this blows up. Harrison rubbed his temples. The phone hadn't stopped ringing. Donors pulling support, advocacy groups demanding meetings, journalists seeking comment. One call had been from Thomas Caldwell's corporate office, asking politely but firmly when the mayor planned to address this miscarriage of justice. At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Thomas Caldwell's eyes opened for the first time in 3 days. The world came back in fragments. White ceiling tiles, the beep of monitors, the antiseptic smell, pain radiating from his ribs and arm. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Tom, don't move. Jennifer's voice, thick with relief and exhaustion. She appeared at his bedside, her eyes red-rimmed. You've been in a coma. You need to stay still. What? His voice came out as a rasp. What happened? Motorcycle accident. Hit and run. You nearly died. She squeezed his hand. Someone saved your life. Memories flickered. The roar of the engine, the SUV pulling out, the pavement rushing up to meet him. Then nothing. Who? Jennifer's expression shifted to something complicated. Gratitude mixed with fury. A 15-year-old homeless girl named Zara Mitchell. She applied pressure to your wound until paramedics arrived. The doctors said without her, you would have bled out. Thomas processed this slowly through the fog of painkillers. Where is she? I need to thank her. She's in juvenile detention. Jennifer's voice hardened. Arrested at the scene for allegedly trying to rob you. What? Thomas tried to sit up again, and this time Jennifer helped him despite the protest from his body. That's insane. I know. That's why I've spent the last 3 days proving it. She pulled out her tablet, showing him the footage, the evidence, and the witness statements. As he watched, his expression moved from confusion to disbelief to rage. They arrested her for saving my life? Witnesses assumed she was stealing because she's homeless and black. The police didn't question it. The prosecutor charged her with assault and attempted robbery. Jennifer paused. I've taken her case pro bono. We went public this morning. Thomas scrolled through the news coverage on her tablet, his fury building with each headline. Get me my phone. Tom, you just woke up from a coma? Get me my phone. Now. 15 minutes later, Thomas Caldwell's official Twitter account, verified, 2.3 million followers, posted a thread that would change everything. I woke up today and learned that a young woman named Zara Mitchell saved my life. I also learned that she was arrested for doing so. This is unconscionable. 1/8. According to medical reports, I would have died without immediate intervention. Zara Mitchell provided that intervention while bystanders filmed instead of helping. 2/8. The thread continued, methodically dismantling the charges, thanking Jennifer for her work, and demanding the immediate release and exoneration of Zara Mitchell. His final tweet was a gut punch. I am a white millionaire who got hurt. She is a black homeless teenager who helped. The system decided I was worth protecting and she was worth punishing. That system is broken, and I will use every resource I have to fix it. 8/8. The thread went viral within minutes. Other tech CEOs retweeted. Celebrities chimed in. The hashtag #FreeZara climbed to #1 trending worldwide. At the detention center, Zara sat in a common room when the news reached her. A guard's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, then looked at Zara with something like awe. You've got the tech billionaire going to war for you, kid. Zara's hands trembled as the guard showed her Thomas's Twitter thread. She read it 3 times, unable to believe that the unconscious stranger she tried to save was now fighting for her from a hospital bed. But the backlash came swiftly. Conservative commentators questioned Thomas's judgment. He's grateful, but he's being manipulated by his activist sister. Crime advocacy groups pushed back. One good deed doesn't erase suspicious behavior, and the prosecutor's office issued a terse statement. We stand by our investigation and will not be swayed by social media pressure. The woman who'd accused Zara at the scene, Diane Foster, gave an interview to a local news station, doubling down. I know what I saw. That girl was going through his pockets. Just because he's grateful doesn't mean she wasn't stealing. Jennifer watched the interview in her office and immediately called her investigator. Find everything on Diane Foster. Employment history, social media, parking tickets. I want to know who she is and why she lied. The investigator called back within 2 hours. You're going to want to see this. Diane Foster worked in marketing specifically for Hexagon Technologies, the same company that owned the Shell Corporation registered to the hit-and-run SUV. Her LinkedIn showed she'd been promoted 3 months ago to Special Projects Coordinator, a vague title that raised red flags. Jennifer stared at the connection, pieces clicking into place. She was there on purpose. She witnessed the hit and run, maybe even coordinated it, and needed a scapegoat when it failed. There's more, the investigator said. Her phone pinged at that intersection 20 minutes before the accident. She was waiting. This wasn't just a wrongful arrest. This was a conspiracy. Jennifer called Officer Harper immediately. We need to bring in Diane Foster for questioning. Now. On what grounds? Conspiracy to commit attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and filing a false police report. I'm sending you everything. By evening, news of the corporate conspiracy angle began leaking. Another headline, CEO hit and run may have been corporate sabotage. Hexagon Technologies stock dropped 8% in after-hours trading. Diane Foster was picked up at her home at 7 p.m., her confident facade cracking the moment Harper showed her the cell phone records. By 9 p.m., she'd requested a lawyer. By 11 p.m., facing overwhelming evidence, she gave up the name of the person who'd hired her to document the accident after it happened. The deputy CEO of Hexagon Technologies. At midnight, Jennifer stood outside the detention center with a judge's order in hand. Emergency bail hearing. Immediate release pending dismissal of all charges. Zara walked out of the building at 12:47 a.m. to a crowd of reporters and supporters chanting her name. Flashbulbs erupted. Questions came from every direction. Jennifer's arm around her shoulders was the only thing keeping her steady. No comment tonight, Jennifer told the press. Ms. Mitchell has been through an ordeal. We'll hold a proper press conference once she's had time to rest. A black SUV waited at the curb, one of Thomas's company vehicles. As Zara climbed inside, she caught sight of a protest sign. Heroes don't deserve cages. She'd been invisible for 2 years. Now she couldn't hide if she tried. And somewhere in a hospital room, Thomas Caldwell watched the footage of Zara's release on his phone, still connected to 4 lines and monitors, already planning how to make this right. The system had tried to break her. Now he was going to help her break it back. The Cook County Courthouse was packed. Every seat filled, reporters lining the walls, cameras positioned at the back capturing everything. The hearing that was supposed to be a routine dismissal of charges had transformed into something else entirely. A reckoning. Zara sat at the defense table beside Jennifer, wearing clothes that actually fit for the first time in years. A navy blazer and white shirt Jennifer had bought her. Her hair had been washed and braided. She looked like a different person. But inside, she felt like the same scared girl who'd sat in that cell wondering if anyone would believe her. Across the aisle, Prosecutor Michael Brennan sat with his team, his expression carefully neutral but his knuckles white as he gripped his pen. He'd tried to get this hearing closed to the public. The judge had denied the motion. Judge Patricia Reeves entered, and everyone rose. She was a black woman in her 60s, known for her no-nonsense approach and her history of challenging prosecutorial overreach. Brennan had tried to get her recused. That motion had been denied too. "Be seated," Judge Reeves said, settling into her chair and surveying the packed courtroom. "Let's get one thing clear from the start. This is not a trial. This is a hearing to determine whether the charges against Zara Mitchell should be dismissed. However, given the nature of this case and the public interest, I'm allowing broader testimony than usual." She looked directly at Brennan. "Mr. Brennan, I've reviewed the evidence submitted by the defense. Before we proceed, do you wish to maintain these charges?" Brennan stood slowly. "Your Honor, the state acknowledges that new evidence has come to light that significantly undermines the original witness statements. However, that's a yes or no question, Counselor." The courtroom held its breath. "The state moves to dismiss all charges against Zara Mitchell," Brennan said, the words clearly painful. Relief flooded through Zara's body, but Jennifer's hand on her arm kept her seated. This wasn't over. Judge Reeves nodded. "Motion granted. The charges are dismissed." She paused, letting that settle. "However, I'm not finished. Ms. Caldwell, I understand you've filed a motion for an inquiry into the conduct of this arrest and prosecution." Jennifer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We're requesting a formal review of how this case was handled, from the initial arrest through charging decisions, to determine whether civil rights violations occurred." "Your Honor, that's outside the scope of this hearing," Brennan protested. "I'm making it within scope," Judge Reeves said sharply. "A 15-year-old child was arrested for saving someone's life and spent 3 days in detention based on witness statements that were not properly vetted. I want answers." She looked at the bailiff. "Bring in Officer Harper." Harper entered, sworn in, and took the stand. Jennifer approached carefully. "Officer Harper, you were one of the responding officers at the scene of the accident. Can you describe what you observed when you arrived?" Harper's testimony was clinical but damning. She described finding Zara with blood-soaked hands, kneeling beside the victim, clearly in distress. She described the crowd's accusations. And then she described something that made the courtroom murmur. "When I reviewed the body camera footage later, I noticed something. My partner, Officer Dennison, made the decision to handcuff Ms. Mitchell within 30 seconds of arriving. He didn't ask her what happened. He didn't secure the scene first. He didn't check if she was injured. He went straight to restraining her." "Why do you think that was?" "Objection," Brennan called. "Calls for speculation." "I'll allow it," Judge Reeves said. Harper looked directly at the judge. "Because he saw a homeless black teenager and a bleeding white man in expensive gear, and he made an assumption. The same assumption the witnesses made. The same assumption this office made when they charged her." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Reeves gavelled for order. Jennifer continued. "And when you expressed concerns about the arrest to your superiors, I was told to file my report and let the prosecutors handle it." Next, Jennifer called Diane Foster to the stand. Foster had been granted limited immunity in exchange for testimony about the larger conspiracy, but she still looked terrified as she was sworn in. "Ms. Foster, You were at the intersection of Ashland and Roosevelt on September 22nd. Why? Foster's voice was barely audible. I was told to be there. By whom? Gerald Hutchins. He's the deputy CEO of Hexagon Technologies. And what were you told to do? To document the accident. To make sure there was a witness who could say it was just a random crash, not intentional. Jennifer pulled up security footage on the courtroom monitors. Is this you? Arriving at the intersection 23 minutes before the accident occurred? Foster's face crumbled. Yes. And is this you on your phone, speaking to someone, at the exact moment Mr. Caldwell's motorcycle approached? Yes. Did you know someone was going to try to kill Thomas Caldwell? I knew something was going to happen. I didn't know the details. Tears streamed down Foster's face. When I saw that girl helping him, and everyone was just standing there, I panicked. I thought if someone got blamed, it would redirect attention away from us. Away from the company. The courtroom exploded. Reporters typed furiously. Cameras zoomed in on Foster's breaking composure. So you deliberately accused an innocent child of assault and robbery to cover up an attempted murder? Foster sobbed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Judge Reeves called for a recess. The courtroom cleared slowly, everyone processing what they just heard in a private conference room. Zara sat with Jennifer, trying to breathe. That woman lied about me to cover up a murder attempt. Yes, Jennifer said quietly. And now she'll face consequences for it. Federal charges, most likely. Conspiracy, obstruction of justice, false reporting. What about the person who tried to kill your brother? Gerald Hutchins was arrested this morning. The FBI has been building a case. He wanted Thomas dead because our company was about to acquire Hexagon, which would have revealed financial fraud he'd been covering up for years. Jennifer paused. Your act of kindness accidentally exposed a massive corporate crime. Zara laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. I just wanted to help someone. I know. When court reconvened, Judge Reeves had clearly reached her limit. I've heard enough. Here's what's going to happen. First, all charges against Zara Mitchell are dismissed with prejudice, meaning they cannot be refiled. Second, I'm ordering a formal review of the Chicago Police Department's protocols for interacting with homeless youth. Third, I'm referring this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for Civil Rights Investigation. She turned to Zara. Young lady, would you like to say anything? Zara stood slowly, her legs shaking. She hadn't prepared a statement. Jennifer had offered to write one, but Zara had declined. If she was going to speak, it had to be her own words. For 2 years, I was invisible, she began, her voice quiet but growing stronger. I slept in doorways and under bridges. I ate from dumpsters. People walked past me every day and never saw me. When they did see me, they saw something to fear or pity, never a person. She looked at the prosecutor's table. When I helped Mr. Caldwell, I became visible for the first time. And you know what happened? I was immediately seen as a criminal. Not because of anything I did, but because of who you decided I was the moment you looked at me. Her voice cracked. I saved someone's life, and you arrested me for it. You didn't ask what happened. You didn't care about the truth. You just needed someone to blame, and I was convenient. The courtroom was silent. I'm not a hero, Zara continued. I'm just a kid who tried to help. And if that makes me a criminal in your eyes, then your eyes are broken. She sat down, exhausted, and Jennifer squeezed her hand. Judge Reeves removed her glasses, her expression soft. Ms. Mitchell, on behalf of a system that failed you, I apologize. Not all of us are broken. Some of us are trying to fix what's damaged. She gavelled. This hearing is concluded. As they left the courthouse, Zara walked into a crowd of cameras and supporters. But one person stood apart from the chaos. A man in casual clothes, his arm in a sling, his head still bandaged. Thomas Caldwell. He moved toward her slowly, and the crowd parted. When he reached Zara, he extended his good hand. Thank you, he said simply, for saving my life. Zara shook his hand, and flashbulbs erupted around them. But for a moment, It was just two people who'd been connected by violence and injustice, finally meeting as equals. "You're welcome," Zara whispered, and in that handshake something shifted. Not just between them, but in the city watching. A homeless teenager and a millionaire, proving that worth wasn't measured in dollars but in courage. The breaking point had been reached. Now comes the healing. 3 weeks after the hearing, Chicago woke to new headlines. But these were different. Caldwell Industries launches $50 million homeless youth initiative. Thomas stood at a podium outside a newly renovated building in the South Loop. Zara beside him, both facing a sea of cameras. The building behind them had been an abandoned warehouse. Now it gleamed with fresh paint and purpose. "This facility will provide housing, education, job training, and mental health services to homeless youth ages 13 to 24, Thomas announced. "It will be called the Zara Mitchell Center for Second Chances." Zara's eyes widened. She hadn't known about the name until this moment. Thomas glanced at her with a slight smile. "Because everyone deserves a second chance. And because Zara showed me that the people our society overlooks are often the ones with the most to give." The center would serve 200 young people in its first year. Social workers, teachers, and counselors had already been hired. Medical care would be free. No one would be turned away. "We're not just providing beds," Jennifer added, stepping forward. She'd left her law firm to run the center's legal advocacy program. "We're fighting the systems that put kids on the streets in the first place. We're suing negligent foster care agencies. We're pushing for policy changes. And we're making sure every young person who walks through these doors has someone in their corner." Zara stepped to the microphone, her voice steadier now than it had been in the courtroom. 3 weeks ago, I was sleeping under a bridge. Today, I have an apartment, I'm enrolled in school, and I'm standing here because people decided I was worth saving." She paused. "But there are thousands of kids still out there who are invisible. This center is for them, so they know someone sees them." At Chicago Police Headquarters, Chief Williams addressed a room full of officers. New protocols were being implemented immediately: mandatory bias training, revised procedures for interacting with homeless populations, body camera reviews for every arrest involving minors. Officer Harper had been promoted to lead the new Community Outreach Division. Officer Dennison, who'd arrested Zara, had been suspended and was under investigation. "The Mitchell case exposed failures we can no longer ignore," Chief Williams said. "We're here to protect all residents of Chicago, not just the ones who look like they belong." In the prosecutor's office, changes were underway as well. Michael Brennan had resigned under pressure. His replacement, a former public defender, announced a new policy. Every case involving homeless defendants would receive extra scrutiny before charges were filed. Gerald Hutchins, the Hexagon deputy CEO, was awaiting trial for attempted murder and fraud. Diane Foster had pleaded guilty to conspiracy and obstruction, receiving a reduced sentence in exchange for her testimony. She'd issued a public apology to Zara, though Zara hadn't responded. "Some people deserve forgiveness," Zara told Jennifer. "But I'm not ready yet. Maybe one day." At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Thomas completed his final physical therapy session. His ribs had healed, his arm regained mobility. The doctors called it a miracle. He should have died on that street. "I did die," Thomas corrected them. "And someone brought me back." He met with Zara weekly now, not out of obligation but genuine connection. They'd share coffee, hot chocolate for Zara, and talk about everything except the accident. Books they were reading, places they wanted to travel. Thomas learned that Zara wanted to be a doctor. He'd already set up a college fund. "You don't have to do this," Zara had protested. "I'm not doing it because I have to," Thomas replied. "I'm doing it because you saved more than my life that day. You reminded me what matters." The city council passed new ordinances protecting homeless residents from criminalization. Sleeping in public spaces would no longer result in automatic arrest. Services would be offered first, jail only as a last resort. Mayor Harrison, facing re-election, tried to take credit for the reforms. He lost anyway. The new mayor had run on a platform of compassion over punishment, and Zara had endorsed her. At Caldwell Industries, the company culture shifted. Thomas implemented new hiring practices, giving opportunities to people with unconventional backgrounds, former foster youth, people with criminal records, those who'd experienced homelessness. The program was called Second Chances, and it was revolutionizing how the tech industry thought about talent. One evening, Zara stood in her new apartment, a real apartment with a bed, a kitchen, and windows that locked from the inside. She looked around at the space that was hers, something she hadn't had in 2 years. Her phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "Dinner tomorrow? There's someone I want you to meet." Someone turned out to be a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell Zara's story, not as tragedy or inspiration porn, but as a complex truth about systems that fail and people who survive. "Only if I get approval over the final cut," Zara said. The filmmaker agreed. 6 months later, spring arrived in Chicago with the kind of warmth that felt like permission to start over. Zara walked through the doors of the Zara Mitchell Center, now in her role as youth advocate. She'd completed her GED and was enrolled at community college, studying pre-med. But 3 days a week, she returned here to work with kids who'd lived the life she'd escaped. "You don't talk down to us," a 16-year-old named Marcus told her during a group session. "You know what it's like." "I do," Zara said. "And I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be forever." The center had served 247 young people in 6 months. 83 had found permanent housing. 47 were back in school. 12 had been reunified with families. The numbers mattered, but so did the stories. Each kid who walked through those doors was a life redirected. Thomas visited often, though he'd stepped back from daily operations. The company practically ran itself now, and he'd discovered he preferred building things that mattered over building wealth. He and Zara had developed an unlikely friendship, the millionaire and the former homeless teen, bonded by blood and circumstance. He'd introduced her to his friends, his world, but he never treated her as a project. She was simply Zara, someone whose opinion he valued and whose company he enjoyed. "You changed my life twice," Thomas told her once. "First by saving it. Second, by showing me what to do with it." The documentary premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. Invisible, the Zara Mitchell story, won the Audience Award. It aired nationally 2 months later, sparking conversations across the country about homelessness, justice, and who society chooses to see. Zara did interviews carefully, selectively. She used her platform not to relive trauma but to advocate for change. She testified before Congress about foster care reform. She spoke at police academies about implicit bias. She partnered with organizations fighting to end youth homelessness. But she also protected her privacy, her healing. Not every moment needed to be public. Not every wound needed to be displayed for education. One afternoon, Zara returned to the intersection where it had all happened. The laundromat was still closed. The pothole had finally been fixed. Nothing marked the spot where Thomas had nearly died and Zara's life had been upended. She stood there, remembering the girl she'd been, invisible, scared, certain she'd never matter. That girl had made a choice to help instead of walk away. And that choice had changed everything. Jennifer found her there. Thinking about that day? Thinking about how random it all was. If I'd been sitting somewhere else. If he'd taken a different route. If I'd chosen to stay invisible. "But you didn't," Jennifer said. "That's what matters." At the 1-year anniversary event for the center, the room was packed with supporters, donors, success stories, and media. Thomas gave a speech about transformation. Jennifer presented new policy victories. But when Zara stepped to the podium, the room fell completely silent. "A year ago, I was nobody," she began. "I was a statistic, a problem, someone to be moved along or locked up. And then I did something that should have been simple. I helped someone who needed it." She paused. "What happened next was complicated and painful and public. But here's what I learned. The system is broken, but people aren't. People can change. Systems can change. If we're brave enough to demand it." She looked across the room at the young people sitting in the front rows. Kids the center had served. Kids who were finding their way back from invisibility. "You're not nobody," Zara said to them directly. "You never were. The world just wasn't looking." But we're making them look now. And we're not stopping until every kid on these streets has somewhere safe to sleep, someone fighting for them, and a chance to become who they're meant to be. Standing ovation. Tears. Hope. After the event, Thomas pulled Zara aside. I've been thinking about expanding the center model to other cities. Los Angeles, Atlanta, Detroit. Would you want to be involved? Not just as a spokesperson, but as a partner. A co-founder. Zara looked at him. This man who'd been a stranger, then a victim, then an ally, now a friend. Equal partners? Equal partners. She extended her hand, and they shook on it. That night, Zara sat in her apartment and wrote in the journal her therapist had suggested. She documented not just the trauma, but the transformation. The girl who'd been invisible had become impossible to ignore. The system that had tried to break her had been forced to bend. She is 18 now, legally an adult, no longer a ward of anyone's care but her own. And tomorrow she'd wake up and keep fighting, for the kids still sleeping on streets, for the system still failing them, for a world where helping someone didn't make you suspect, but simply made you human. The story that began with a crash on a Chicago intersection had become a movement. And Zara Mitchell, once homeless, once arrested, once invisible, was leading it. Not because she was perfect or healed or certain, but because she'd learned that the most powerful thing you can do is choose to be seen, to speak the truth, and to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. The streets where she'd once slept still existed, but now, because of her, fewer kids had to sleep on them. And that, finally, felt like justice.